Hello everybody and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below and it'll give you a flavor of what the Horror Movie Syllabus does. In short, what we do is take a particular subgenre of horror and then take 3 movies from that subgenre to examine. Today, the subgenre that we're looking at is dolls. And I don't know what it is about dolls that make them so ripe for horror stories. I don't know what makes them so inherently scary. In theory, they shouldn't be, but we all know that they are. Perhaps it's that uncanny valley idea, that kind of soulless eyes looking back at you. I don't know what it is. It's something that taps into like childhood fears because it's very visceral, very real. Maybe not everybody suffers from it, but it seems like it's very universal or ubiquitous that people find dolls to be creepy. Now, obviously not all dolls. Like if you got a stuffed baby Grogu, you're not freaking out about that. But some of those older dolls, as creepy baby dolls or those porcelain dolls or things like that, just uncannily creepy, just very, very unsettling. And I don't know what it is about that. I guess it's something about the psychology of it. Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of the armchair psychologist right now, I guess. But I know that it must tap into something, some sort of childhood fear, some sort of weird, like, facsimile of people that makes it just uncomfortable and bizarre and hard to get comfortable around. But suffice to say, horror movies have really tapped into this and made gold out of this weird fear. For me, ever since the doll in Poltergeist, which it was used elsewhere, so we're not talking about it today, it hits for me. Creepy Dolls is a good one for me. I really like this stuff, and we're gonna talk about some movies that I really enjoy, and some that are just more, kind of universally enjoyed that maybe I'm not as high on, but that are worthy enough to mention here. So, if you like scary doll movies, you've come to the right place today. But if you don't, if dolls bother you, we show clips in the Horror Movie Syllabus videos, so you're gonna see some creepy dolls in these clips, So I don't think it really needs a trigger warning, anything like that. I'm just saying I know some people really react pretty strongly to dolls, and again, I don't know why. I don't know why, but I think it's fun. I think it's fun that horror movies have tapped into this and use it as a trope or a plot device enough to make its own subgenre, and with a lot of good movies in it. So why don't we start looking at them right now? Actually, as usual, we're gonna organize them undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate level. But in this case, we will do them in the order of quality because not all doll movies are created equal. There are some good ones, there are some bad ones, and we will talk a little bit about both. But why don't we start talking about it right now? The first doll horror movie that we're talking about today, the undergraduate level selection, is Annabelle. Annabelle came out in 2014 and it was a spin-off to the Conjuring universe that had been set up previously. And it really became its own franchise and a matter of debate as to whether or not it should have. There are pros and there are cons on that issue, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. If you're not familiar with it, the movie starts with these cultists, these kind of Manson family-esque cultists, attacking this family in the middle of the night. And during the course of this attack, the cultists die, and one of them imbues her spirit or connects her spirit to this inanimate porcelain doll. The doll then winds up becoming strange and doing strange things and kind of creeping people out, and it's tied to this evil spirit, and hijinks abound, I guess is where I'll go with that, so as to not spoil the movie too much, even though it's not that hard to figure out where the movie's going for the most part. So Annabelle is interesting because it's a spin-off and because the spin-off starts technically before where you saw it in the Conjuring universe, and so that kind of constrains the movie a little bit because that doll has to wind up at a certain place at a certain time, and by the end of the movie it does. So you kind of know that the doll is going to not be defeated and stuff like that. But the real reason why Annabelle is interesting as a doll subgenre horror movie is that the doll doesn't feel like it fits in very well with the story. Like the premise of the story isn't bad, and it's got an interesting, or at least kind of interesting, mystery to solve about it. But the initial premise, the start of the movie starts out pretty strong, and then it kind of starts to slide a little bit as they try to make the doll work into it, just so you can get creepy doll scares. Annabelle the doll doesn't do a lot, and that's the thing is that unlike a lot of the other movies we're going to talk about today, Annabelle the doll just kind of sits there a lot of the time and is creepy. It's a creepy doll. It's a very creepy doll, and that's the thing. It's kind of like objectively creepy. Like a lot of the dolls that we think of as creepy aren't really creepy, but they become creepy for some reason. It's hard to explain. Annabelle the doll is designed to look creepy. Like it just does look creepy, and it does creepy things. It seems like it moves by itself and stuff like that, but it doesn't really go very far with that. Where what they're really doing is telling like this, angry spirit demon story, the vengeance story thing, which is not bad. But the doll doesn't fit very smoothly in that story. But I might be the minority on this one because it's wildly popular. This movie. I don't think it's a very good movie. And in fact, the critics don't think it's a very good movie. I'm not alone in thinking it's not a very good movie, but it's a wildly popular movie, popular enough to have its own franchise, even though it's a spin-off of a franchise, it has its own franchise. People like this movie. And I think it's because there's a lot of people out there that buy into Annabelle. It's kind of funny to see people talk about that and like they believe Annabelle is real because it comes from the stories of Ed and Lorraine Warren, this cursed object, this cursed doll, and so oh, it's based on real thing. Annabelle's a real thing. You don't want to touch Annabelle because you have. It's so funny to me, but people really buy into it, and you know what? Hey, that's great. If you're really buying into it and it's really scaring you and you're really creeped out by Annabelle, awesome, man. I don't want to take that away from you. I think it's silly, but that's cool. Have a good time. But if you're buying into this, then yeah, I guess it's creepy, but I'm not. I'm not scared of Annabelle. I'll give Annabelle a big old hug. I don't care. I'm not scared of Annabelle at all. So this movie falls flat for me. But again, I'm in the minority because a hell of a lot of people saw this movie, made a lot of money, made a couple sequels. We had one sequel and one prequel. And the prequel is surprisingly good, and I like it quite a bit. It's telling a little bit about the origins of the doll and everything, and yeah, it has no business being as good as it is, but that's probably because of the creative team behind it that is very, very good. And they did something impressive with that movie. But it's surprising, but the sequel is not surprising. It's kind of flat. It's kind of meh. It's kind of on par with the first movie, but it's got McKenna Grace in it, who I think is exceptional. She's an exceptional actress who's going to be, I think, a big star because she just has so much natural. She reminds me a lot of Dakota Fanning, just natural talent. And so she's worth seeing in the movie, but the movie itself is fine. It's not bad. None of these movies are bad. They're just not as good as I'd like them to be. I mean, Annabelle has a pretty creepy setup, but it doesn't really pay off. And that's unfortunate because that setup is strong. That opening is strong. The concept's not bad. It's just the doll itself, while creepy looking, doesn't do much to pay off that creepiness. So many other the movies that we'll look at have a payoff. Annabelle feels like it doesn't, and I know some people will disagree with me on that. And that's okay. Tell me about it in the comments, like why you love Annabelle if you love Annabelle. But I'm gonna guess that a lot of you don't really love Annabelle. Like I said, it's got its fans enough so to make a franchise out of it. But I think like the hardcore horror people, not really that into Annabelle, and maybe not even that into the Conjuring franchise. I do like the Conjuring franchise, but Annabelle falls short, but that second one's worth a watch for sure. So if you do like Annabelle, let us know in the comments what it is about it that I'm missing, or defend its honor, if you will. But if you haven't seen Annabelle, it's fine. If you like scary dolls, you like a good creep fest. It's competently made. It's perfectly fine. It's just not amazing. Don't expect hype on that. Manage your expectations, and I think you'll have a good time with it. Now, the second movie that we're talking about today, the graduate level selection, is Child's Play. Child's Play came out in 1988, and now we're getting into the good stuff. Now you're getting the stuff that Professor Victor really digs into. Child's Play is a kind of a favorite of mine. It's a slasher movie, so I'm already there, but it's a slasher killer doll movie, so I'm very much there for that. If you're not familiar with it, the movie is about a serial killer named Charles Lee Ray who, when being pursued by police, is dying. So he puts his spirit into the body of a good guy doll, this doll that's aimed towards boys, because that happens. And the doll Chucky version of him winds up getting given to this young boy named Alex, and he kind of winds up terrorizing Alex and the people around him as Chucky tries to figure out how to get back into human form. And I don't really want to spoil it any more than that, of course, so I'll stop there. But I love Child's Play and I love Chucky. A big reason why I love Chucky and the movies is because of actor Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif is a horror legend and just an acting legend in general, frankly. He's an amazing actor, and Chucky is probably his most iconic role. He plays Charles Lee Ray, the killer, and then he voices the doll Chucky, and he's brilliant. Chucky has so much personality. He's not unlike Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger, like from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 onward. He really oozes personality, kind of a sick, twisted sense of humor, a wry smile, and he's dangerous but also funny. Works like gangbusters. It really, in fact, I like Chucky more than I like Freddy in that sense because I think Chucky's sense of humor just kind of jives better for me. I don't know, but I'm a big fan of the series because of Brad Dourif's performance. Now, the first movie plays it a little bit more straight, like Nightmare on Elm Street. They're going a little bit more for straight horror, but the Chucky personality still comes through in the first movie, unlike I think in the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and that's I think a good thing. I think that the idea or the instinct to go straight and play it kind of for a straight horror early on was wise, so that when it went more campy and more fun later on, it was a natural progression that felt organic and felt earned. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. This first movie does have a little bit of gamesmanship early on where, people aren't seeing Chucky talk yet. They don't reveal the doll for a while. And it's a great moment when they finally reveal him. Unfortunately, we all know who he is now. He's kind of a slasher icon, really. And I could have put it in that subgenre, but I didn't. I put it here. But he that moment hits less because Chucky. It's not a surprise. But I remember that moment hitting for me very well when I first saw the movie when it came out. When I was 13, 14 years old. And I remember it reminding me of the Twilight Zone episode. I think it's called Living Doll. It's the one with Talking Tina in there, where it's like Chucky, Talking Tina, who starts saying these threatening things to people and tries to kill the family of the little girl. It's a fantastic episode, and it creeped me out as a kid. I was so freaked out by Talking Tina as a kid. Actually, that predates Poltergeist for me. That was the first creepy doll that really unsettled me. And Child's Play is basically doing the same thing and doing it well. So I ate up Child's Play with a spoon. I really like the movie, and the Chucky design is really well. The animatronic doll that they've got is great. The expressions that it makes, the way it moves, so creepy, so fun, so well done. You got to tip your hat to the special effects team for this movie. They did a great job, and most of it holds up. Most of the effects hold up really, really well. The story is it's a little wonky. There's some voodoo nonsense in there that doesn't really make a lot of sense and maybe borderline offensive, frankly. And there's some major plot holes in there. The kid acting is not great, but it's kind of charmingly not great. You kind of love it, like at least I do. I kind of love him in the movie, even though he's like kind of acting not great. It's kind of kid acting, but it works for me. Like, there's a charm to this movie that while it may not be the best made movie, it's a lot of fun and it knows what it is, so it's having a good time. And that's all I ask. If you're trying to entertain me, have a good time. You don't have to be the best, most amazingly made movie. Just have a good time. People did, apparently, because they've franchised the hell out of this thing. There are so many Chucky movies. I'm not even sure. Is it 7 now? I don't know. Uncle Pete, let me know in the comments below how many Chucky movies there are. I can look it up, but I don't feel like I can just do it. Uncle Pete, if you don't know, by the way, check out his channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. He is like the biggest Chucky fan I know, and he'll tell you how great Chucky is and all the reasons why. So, Uncle Pete, you got your marching orders in the comments. But if you aren't familiar with Chucky, you should check out probably the whole series. They vary in quality. They're not all great, and people have their opinions on them. I like them all though. I don't think there is any that I hate. Like I said, some of them I like a lot more than others, and Bride of Chucky in particular is a high point for me. I really like Bride of Chucky quite a bit. We've talked about Chucky in some other videos too. I don't want to spoil any of them, but we've mentioned Chucky before because he bears mentioning. I even have a friend who was in one of the Chucky movies, but that's a story for another time. In essence, the Chucky movies are just a good time, and as the series went on, they became more and more fun, and that's a big part because Don Mancini, the creator of Chucky, the original writer and later on director of the movies, has done a very good job of keeping that franchise relevant and like protecting it, making sure it didn't get messed up too much. He even did a TV show recently that quite good. You wouldn't think so, but it actually works really well as a series. Where this falls off is in the remake of the original Child's Play. A lot of people hate that movie. I don't. I like it, but it's not a Chucky movie. I could be clear about that. Like if you think about it as just like a killer doll movie that's focused more on like AI and stuff like that, it's pretty good. It's got Mark Hamill doing the voice, which is not Brad Dourif, and that's good because you don't. It's not Chucky. It's got Aubrey Plaza and Brian Tyree Henry. It's got a good cast. It's fun. It's an interesting movie, and it really makes good use of the modern technology, but it's not Chucky. It's not the original series. So if you can think of it that way, I think you have a better time than if you try to compare it to the rest of the franchise. But the rest of the franchise is a blast. The first one's where it starts out maybe a little bit more serious than what you're expecting, but not that serious because again, it's a killer doll trying to jump on people and kill them, and it's a blast. But if you haven't seen Child's Play, check out the whole series for sure. But I'm guessing a lot of you have, so let us know in the comments below, how much do you love Chucky? Because I gotta believe you love some Chucky. So let us know in the comments below. Talk to Uncle Pete if you love Chucky because he loves him too. But Chucky, Child's Play, I'm a huge fan of it. I can't recommend it enough. In the last movie on the syllabus that we're talking about today, the postgraduate level selection is May. May came out in 2002 and is very different from pretty much all the other movies that we're talking about today in terms of doll movies. It's a very different kind of doll movie, and I dare say it's unlike any other doll movie you've ever seen before, and maybe one of the more unique horror movies you've ever seen. If you're not familiar with it, the movie is about a girl who is very socially awkward. She grew up with a lazy eye that has had a severe impact on her self esteem and her social skills. And now, as an adult, her only friend is this doll encased in glass. And she tries to make connections with other people, and it doesn't go well. But if she can't find friends, she can always make one. And I'll just leave it there without spoiling anything more because this movie is brilliant. And I think if you don't know it and you haven't seen it, you should just go check it out and let it unfold naturally. I love May. It's one of those movies, it's kind of a cult hit. It was not a popular movie by any stretch of the imagination when it came out, but it seems like people who watch it really like it. It really seems like it finds a little bit of cult audience, but not a big one. And that's a shame because I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. The movie's directed by Lucky McKee, and we've talked about Lucky McKee on the channel before. He's made a pretty good name for himself as a horror director, directing movies like The Woods and The Woman, All Cheerleaders Die. And I like his movies a lot, but I think May might be his best one. It's really well directed. It's got a really wonderful story with pathos to it. You feel for the main character of May, played by Angela Bettis, because she's so lonely and sad and has had a tough upbringing. And you connect to her and you feel for her. And so when things start going dark, it's an interesting feeling. You kind of want to stick with her, but it's hard to do that considering where the places where this movie goes. It gets pretty dark and pretty gruesome, and so I like that. I like that movie is not just a schlocky, fun thrills kind of movie, but actually kind of has some heart to it in a weird, tormented, twisted way. I've seen people describe this movie as a slasher film. That is very, very wrong. It's not a slasher film at all. It doesn't really have that feel at all, which is not to say anything bad about slashers. I love slashers, but May is on a different level. It's a different kind of movie. But calling it a doll movie is a little bit challenging because it's not a killer doll wandering around killing people. It really is, at the risk of spoiling things too much, it's a woman who is very lonely and kind of obsessed with her doll and maybe needs to make some friends. And if you can kind of pick up what I'm putting down there, you can kind of see where I'm going with that. But if not, just watch the movie and find out. At the end of the movie, you will definitely say, yeah, this is a doll movie, but it's not like any other doll movie I've ever seen. Very different kind of doll. Super creepy doll, maybe the creepiest of dolls. So That is a lot of fun. The movie's performances are across the board great. Angela Bettis is incredible as the lead character May. She is wonderfully awkward and yet charmingly beautiful, even though she's supposed to be kind of like the nerdy, quiet, mousy girl. And that works. That balance works really, really well. You buy into it. She's pretty enough and alluring enough to draw in Jeremy Sisto, who is like her love interest in the movie. A very handsome man, but also awkward and weird enough to believe that she doesn't think she can get Jeremy Sisto. So that's a hard balance to strike, and she strikes it really, really well. She's wonderful in the movie, very charming. I like her in everything she does, frankly, and she's really great here. It's one of her best performances. And I like Jeremy Sisto a lot too. Hey, I like me some Clueless. I liked him in everything I've seen him do. He does great work also, and he's good here. And Anna Faris shows up in a small but interesting and fun role. Like the acting is good in the movie. The movie gets to some ludicrous places, even though it starts out very somber and kind of like real, and you're kind of brushing up against some issues of mental illness, mental health, and so it feels very serious and a little bit heavy, and then it goes really crazy. Crazy dark, but also kind of like surreally dark, like you're wondering to yourself, should I be taking this seriously? And the question is, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it's a lot of fun. I really, really love the movie. I think that more people should see it. I don't know if you've seen May. Let me know what you think. I'm pretty high on it, obviously, and I feel like just go see it. The less you know, the better. It's a very strange, demented, wonderful movie. But if you've seen it, let us know what you think of it. Am I overstating it? Am I hyping it up too much, or is it really as underrated as I think it is? And if you haven't seen it, check it out. Like I said, come back and let me know what you think because I think you're in for quite a ride if you haven't seen May. So that's going to do it for our syllabus picks for the dolls subgenre. But if you like doll movies like I do, we got quite a few extra credit movies to talk about. So let's get into those right now. The first extra credit movie we're going to talk about is Dolls. And that stands to reason. Dolls came out in 1987, and it's called Dolls, so we got to put it in here. But we got to also put it in here because it's a lot of fun. This movie is just the quintessential what you think of when you think of doll movies, and that's a good thing. If you're not familiar with it, the movie's about a group of people that get stuck out in a storm and wind up having to stay in the house of this puppet maker and his wife, and it's all a little bit off there, a little bit strange, a little bit weird, and the house is a little mysterious, and all the people staying there are kind of terrible. And so as they go on, they start getting bumped off one by one, and the dolls in the house, the puppets, may or may not have something to do with that. And spoiler alert, they do. But that's the only spoiler we're going to give. We're going to stop right there before we get too deep into it. But I love Dolls. Dolls is just a lot of fun. It's a very charming movie. It's directed by Stuart Gordon, and it's a little weird that it's directed by Stuart Gordon when you look at his other work, which we will be doing in the very near future. Stuart Gordon and his Lovecraft fascination tends to go much weirder and more gruesome and gory. And in this case, he's playing it a little bit more soft. This movie is a good movie for kids to watch, really. It's not that scary. That said, the dolls are pretty creepy. They're really well realized, especially when you consider it's 1987. The effects hold up fairly well. And so there's some gruesome stuff in there, like I say, for kids, maybe a little bit older kids, because it's genuinely scary. And if their kids have dolls, they're going to be afraid of them after this movie. But I also like that there's kind of a moral center to this movie. The bad things are happening to bad people, and there's this kind of through line of like the dolls and the toys being a force for good in a way that's interesting. I like that, and that's why I say it's kind of maybe good for kids because it's got a good moral center, a good moral message to it that I think resonates to this day, frankly. But it's really the dolls themselves that stand out really well. The effects, like I said, they're a little dated, sure, but in a charming way, they do really hold up. They're really impressive still, and I really like it. It's just a fun movie. It's well made, and it's endured. It's a bit of a cold hit. It's never a huge hit, but it's endured for a reason. And I think it's because it's charming. It's a charming movie. It's a lot of fun, and if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. The next extra credit movie we're going to talk about is Dead Silence. And Dead Silence came out in 2007 and was made by James Wan and Lee Winnell, director and writer behind Saw and the Conjuring films and stuff. It's really two guys that have gone on to have great success, but this is early on in their career, and it kind of shows. But we'll get into that in a second. If you haven't seen the movie, the story is about a guy whose wife gets killed, and there is a ventriloquist dummy as part of it, and he gets a clue about this old and ventriloquist that might have some sort of bearing on what has happened. So when he starts to investigate that, and he finds this ventriloquist who was murdered, and maybe her spirit is seeking vengeance, and maybe the dolls have something to do with it. And I don't want to get too into it because it is a mystery, and we don't want to spoil it too much for you. But if you find ventriloquist dummies scary, which I do, this movie might work well for you. The movie is playing it mostly straight, and that's maybe a mistake. Maybe the movie should have been a little bit more fun. But I liked the mystery part of it. I think that even though it's a little bit of a convoluted mystery, I think that was the right way to go with this. To kind of give some meat on the bone, so you don't just have this dummy running around trying to kill people. But you'd be surprised watching this that it's James Wan, because later on you would see his directing skills really flourish, and here you're not seeing that as much. It doesn't feel quite as polished or as good as what you would see him do in the future, or even what he did with Skull, which I think was done before this. And rumor has it it's a lot of that is studio interference, and I can buy into that. They probably wanted something a little bit more accessible, a little bit more regular than what Juan would probably wanted to do. This movie could have had more tone and atmosphere to it, but I still like it. And the movie is maligned by critics. There's a lot of people don't like this movie. I think even James Wan doesn't really like this movie, but it does have its fans. It seems like it's building up a bit of a cult fandom. I don't know if it's really a full on cult film yet, but it feels like it kind of is. And I think it's just because if you look at it from the right angle, the right perspective, it's a fun movie. It's kind of ludicrous. It's got some fun, ludicrous stuff in it, especially the last act. The last act goes bug nuts crazy. And I think that's where the fans really come into it. It's like the first two acts taking itself really seriously. The last act, it's like they just went, you know what, the hell with it. Let's just go wild on this one. And they really did. That last act, some of the twists in the end, even though you maybe could see them coming, they're kind of bonkers, and that's what makes this movie a lot of fun, at least for me, and I think for a lot of other people. That last act is the weirdness of it is what really sells this movie and makes it a cult fave. If you haven't seen Dead Silence, again, check it out. If you like James Wan and you haven't seen Dead Silence, check it out and see if that really throws your mind off a bit, because it's surprising to see that early work of his, but you can see the glimmers of where the talent is. Manage your expectations if you haven't seen it, because it's not a great movie, but if you're in the right mood and the right spirit for it, you can definitely get into it. And if you have seen Dead Silence, let me know what you think. Like I said, I had a lot of people out there don't like it. If you're one of them, let us know. Tell me how it sucks. I'm not going to argue with you. I know it's not a good movie, but I like it, and I thought I'd bear mentioning here for the reasons I've mentioned. Let's talk more about Dead Silence in the comments below. And the last extra credit movie we're going to talk about today is The Boy. Now, The Boy came out in 2016 and is a really good classic doll horror movie. It really does tap into that, at least until the end, but we'll get into that without spoiling it in just a minute. If you haven't seen it, The Boy stars Lauren Cohen from The Walking Dead as a woman hired as a nanny by this elderly couple who want her to watch over a porcelain doll that they treat as if it's their son. She's very weirded out by that, but the money's good, and so she decides to go ahead and go along with it. Only the doll starts acting a little bit weird and doing weird stuff, as the dolls do in doll horror movies, and hijinks begin to abound, leading to a rather surprising conclusion that is too good to spoil, so we won't do it here. But The Boy really wasn't thought of too much when it first came out. It didn't make a huge impact, and I don't think it was particularly critically loved. But it really has found its audience since then. People have found this movie and really like this movie. And again, I think it's because of the way it ends. The movie is well made. It's well acted. As a lot of these we've talked about are. Lauren Cohen in particular, very good in the movie, and the doll is adequately creepy. Unlike Annabelle, it doesn't look like it's trying to overtly be evil looking or anything like that. It's just a creepy porcelain doll of a boy, but it works really well. So the creepy doll scenes really hit better in this movie for me, at least. But the last act and the twist that they throw into this is pretty fantastic. It really recontextualizes the movie and makes you want to watch it all over again. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, the movie's got some plot holes. I don't think it totally holds up when you see how the movie ends and you go back and rewatch it. You're like, some of that doesn't track, but who cares? Because it's fun. The movie winds up being a good time. Like I said, if you like doll movies, this is a good one because this one really taps into that doll aesthetic, that doll trope, if you will. And that creep factor of it in a really compelling, satisfying way. And then you get hit up with that ending, and it works really, really well. And I think the movie's cult status really is bona fide because they decide to go ahead and make a sequel to it a couple years later that is not well received. And here's the thing: I don't hate the movie because it stars Katie Holmes, and I'm a big Katie Holmes fan because I love me some Dawson's Creek because you know my TV taste. But it's not a particularly great movie because it undoes some of the interesting things that the first movie did. It really abandons the neat twist and the neat grounding of the first movie in favor of something that's a little bit more stereotypical, a little less interesting, and it just kind of falls flat in a number of ways. Plus, it really requires you to suspend your disbelief. So, the sequel you can pass on the sequel. It's not great, even though it's got Katie Holmes. If you love Katie Holmes like me, check it out. But otherwise, pass on the sequel, but don't sleep on the original. Even though it didn't get great reviews, even though it's not exactly a beloved movie, it's much better than people say it is. It's much better than the fate it got. It didn't deserve that. It's a nice little gem. You know, it's again not an amazing movie. I don't want to oversell it. Manage your expectations, of course. But if these are your kind of movies and you haven't seen The Boy, check it out. It's going to be a good time. And of course, if you've seen it, let us know what you think of it. So that's going to do it for our exploration into doll horror movies. As you can tell, I really like these kind of movies. They are something that kind of hit a sweet spot for me. And I bet you a lot of you like these movies as well, because I know these movies tend to be pretty popular. In fact, I'm expecting some of you to have your own suggestions of movies that I left off. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering though, where's Puppet Master? We're getting to Puppet Master in a future video. There's a reason why I didn't bring it up here. I want to talk about it somewhere else, but Puppet Master definitely would fit. And there's other movies that I know you guys love that you'll mention too. Drop them in the comments because we can have a further conversation. I love hearing your guys' recommendations. But for now, let's get into our horror trivia question for the week. As you know, I like to read a horror trivia question on the camera, live on camera, and see if I can answer it or if I'm going to embarrass myself like I did last week. So since we're talking about dolls and it's usually supernatural, let's do the supernatural category on the horror trivia pursuit card. And the question for today is, in 2005's The Exorcism of Emily Rose, what is the name of the priest on trial? Well, damn. I don't know. I don't know. I do like that movie. We've talked about that movie. It was on a previous video, and I think that movie is very good. I think it's a better blend of courtroom drama and horror than a straight horror movie. In fact, I think the courtroom drama stuff is probably the more compelling part of that movie, which is why you would think I could maybe remember the name of the father on trial because that's the stuff I was paying the most attention to, but I don't remember it. But as you guys know, if you've been watching these questions, I'm terrible with the names. I don't tend to remember character names very well because I don't care. You know what I mean? With exceptions or with movies I've seen a ton of times, I'll learn the names. But like, you know, for example, I love the Friday the 13th franchise, but I couldn't tell you the names of most of the people who get killed, except for like the final girls, you know? It's just, I just don't bother to retain that knowledge. And that's me just making excuses, obviously, as I give you guys some time to think about this, because I'm going to have to take a shot in the dark here. Hopefully you guys know this. Maybe you guys are big fans of the Exorcism of Emily Rose. Maybe you guys know this, but I don't. I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say it's Father Thomas Willoughby. That's the name I'm going to say. Shot in the dark, and if I hit that, it's going to be amazing, right? Like, it's going to be incredible if I hit that. But I know I didn't. I know I got that wrong. So hopefully you've got your answer, because we're going to go ahead and read the answer now. And the answer is Father Moore. Moore, Father Moore. You know, I had no idea. So, you know, it is what it is. But that's the second week in a row that I'm just completely clueless on it. So that kind of sucks. But what are you going to do? You know, you win some, you lose some. Hopefully you guys got that question right. I did not. And if you like Exorcism Emily Rose, go check out the video for that. And it should be pretty obvious which one it is. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the comments and talk about these doll movies, because that's where I really excel. Let's continue our conversation down below, guys. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for hanging out to the end of the video. And until next week, class dismissed.